Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. I'm your host, Bill Potter. We are once again joined by State Representative Shane Lindauer, who, as of last week, basically they have wrapped up the session, but they are suspended, not necessarily done for the year. State Representative, welcome to the show. If you could kind of explain that suspension part.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to be here, Bill. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, as you alluded to there, we finished actually a week early with kind of the normal business of session, which was a pleasant surprise for everyone, I think. You know, technically we were scheduled to go till next week, the 28th, I believe. But we were able to get the budget and obviously a lot of other bills wrapped up ahead of time. The reason we didn't officially technically end and like we would in a normal session is because we also it's a districting year, a redistricting year, but we are currently waiting on the census numbers from the federal government before we can go back in and really do the redistricting, as it needs to be done. So once those numbers come in, we will go back into session. I've heard anywhere from a few days to a week or so. And it's probably going to be closer to the fall, it sounds like, but things are really up in the air as far as when that's going to happen or, I guess when it's going to happen, I guess is probably the way I'll leave that. So, but in any case, yeah, we did finish up the budget yesterday and lots to talk about there. So,
okay, if you would, let's talk about some how you think this year's session went and the budget.
Yeah, sure. So I got the numbers in front of me here. Looks like about 220 bills passed, about 120 came through the House, 100 passed through the Senate. And so they'll go on to the governor to sign. I was just on the website this morning because I had a few bills out there yet to see if he had signed yet. So certainly he's got to work through all those bills to sign yet. It looked like he had about 120 of those 220 signed already. So he's got a little ways to go as far as signing all those bills, but that's, roughly, I don't recall the exact number of bills that were introduced, but it's typically over 1,000 between the House and the Senate. So like I said, about 220 looks like went through both the House and the Senate. The biggest one there that you alluded to being in a long session, which is a budget year, is the state budget. So that's every year that the budget has to originate in the House, and so that's House Bill 1001, and yeah, that we that's in a budget year. That's the last bill we work on as far as actually passing, and we did that yesterday, right around noon sometime. We started discussion and debate on that, but really good numbers. I think it surprised everyone just coming out of a pandemic. I think most folks this year, last time we were looking at cuts, across the board on a lot of things. And so, quite honestly, I'm relatively new at the state legislature, relatively speaking. And so what the legislature has done in years past to be, fiscally conservative really set Indiana up, I think, to be in a good position here going forward. And so the revenue forecast was exceptional. And so here right at the end of the session, that allowed us to kind of revise the budget from where it originally was. And I've got some numbers here I'm happy to share with you here, but I'm going to read them so I don't butcher them. So there's a $1.9 billion in new K through 12 education funding over the biennium. So the budget, we do a biennial budget. So a significant increase in K through 12 funding there. There was a $500 million appropriation for a regional economic, it's a grant for regional development. And so one thing that I've kind of been, I thought, passionate about since I've been in the legislature is getting our communities to work together more, to compete in the state. And I represent Jasper, I represent Washington, and I've said to folks in both communities that Jasper alone can't compete with Evansville or Indianapolis. Washington alone can't compete with Indianapolis or Evansville. But if we can pool our resources in our rural communities, I think that we have a lot better shot to retain talent, attract a workforce, and those kind of things. So the state put a grant in there to help those things. So if a couple counties, 2, 3, 4 counties come together to form a regional economic development area, there's opportunities to get some state grants for that. There's also one of the House bills I worked on, House Bill 1004, you and I have talked about a little bit, was a $60 million appropriation for small business grants to help them recover from the pandemic and from the lockdowns. There was a $70 million grant for law enforcement to update their training, law enforcement's training, and the Law Enforcement Academy. And then another thing that I think will interest people, and I hear a lot about in district as well, is internet and internet access. And so there's a $250 million broadband grant, and there was some money left in that grant funding as well. So those are, I think, probably some of the highlights. There's obviously the budget's a huge bill, so there's a lot in there, but those are probably some of the highlights here.
And I think if I heard on the news that this was the most bipartisan passing of a budget in a long time, or maybe in history.
Yeah, it's certain. I mean, again, this is my goodness gracious, I should know this. I guess my second actual budget that I've been a part of, and yeah, it was, I think, a bit of a surprise that it was as I think we had 2 no votes on the budget. So yeah, it was. And actually, those were both Republicans who voted no on that. So, and so, yeah, it was a bipartisan, which is nice. And that may be a bit of a surprise to people. In Indiana, we have our differences at the state government, certainly, and there's always a few issues that, can bring a lot of discussion and debate. But man, most of the bills that we pass are bipartisan bills. It really isn't. It's not nearly as contentious as I thought it was going to be when I got into state government. Anyway, I know that's not maybe always the case at the federal level, but certainly in state government, it's a lot of bipartisan support. So
now, some people may think, okay, the session's ended for the most part, so you're done. Not really, because people can still contact you with issues that they want to be taken care of next year.
Absolutely. Yeah. You and I have maybe talked before as well on that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get a number here, but a good chunk of what we do in the legislature, it's not like, we sit around and brainstorm on different things that we can do as legislators. A lot of what we do are ideas that are brought to us from constituents. And so several of the bills that I've worked on since I've been here, actually most of the bills I've worked on since I've been here have come from constituents or issues working with constituents. And yeah, to your point, if we don't know there's a problem out there, then we may not know that something needs to be tweaked in code or something like that. So yeah, I always encourage people to reach out, contact myself or our Senator Messmer, Representative Bartels, and Senator Houchin. So in Du Bois County here, we've got Du Bois County is very well covered as far as representation. There's several of us that you can reach out to us, and I'm certainly not saying that every idea is going to be one that we're able to get across the governor's desk there. But again, unless we have those conversations, we don't know. So.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this session. Look forward to talking with you again as the next session comes in, which would be, I guess, January of next year.
Correct. Yeah, it'll be January of next year. It's always right after the first of the year. We'll go back in, with the exception of that, redistricting deal that we've got to do toward the end of the year here. So, but yeah, I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure talking with you on Fridays the last several weeks, and appreciate the opportunities.
Well, thank you very much. Our guest has been State Representative Shane Lindauer, who represents you. Contact him over the next, I guess, so many months if you've got ideas of things that need to be passed in the legislation or discussed. Thank you, State Representative. Appreciate your time. And
yes, sir. Thank you
for watching 18 WJTS. We are local people watching local people.